Why is the Industrial Revolution begin in Great Britain, Scotland, and England, and why during the 18th century? And there's several reasons for this. First of all, this is the Enlightenment. This is the 18th century is the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was overwhelmingly a British phenomenon, which was well known at the time. Scotland was the fountainhead of the Enlightenment. The Scottish Enlightenment was the fountainhead of what followed in the 18th century. The leitmotif of the age is a respect for reason, a respect for the rational mind. The leading figure of the Enlightenment, in my judgment, is Isaac Newton. Now, Newton's dates was 1642 to 1727, so he's straddling the age of reason and the Enlightenment. But Newton is the greatest scientist of history, period. Didn't merely explain much about the laws of motion in physics. No. Newton did much more than that. What he showed the leading thinkers of the 18th century was the power of reason to understand nature. This is what Newton bequeathed the philosophers of the 18th century. The power of reason to understand nature. In the political realm at the same time, the great English philosopher John Locke, writing in the two treatises of civil government published roughly 1690, I forget the exact date, but it's late 17th century, Locke codifies the growing commitment of English culture to the personal liberties and individual rights. When Locke says that every individual has the unalienable right to life, liberty, and property, a formulation copied almost verbatim by Thomas Jefferson 80 years later, Locke's giving voice to the growing principles in Britain at that time of the rights of the individual, including of the commoners, not just aristocrats or sons of the monarch, but to the commoners. And Great Britain in the 18th century is the politically freest country in the world. And its progeny across the pond in North America was about to become even freer. So you notice in Britain at that time, you have a culture of reason. Newton is a towering figure here, and a politics of individual rights. Locke also, a towering figure. Great Britain's the freest country in the world, and you see what this means. This is the dawn of capitalism. The essence of capitalism is the idea or the principle that your life belongs to you. Your life belongs to you. It doesn't belong to the king. It doesn't belong to the church. It doesn't belong to the state. Your life belongs to you. And it follows logically that if your life belongs to you, then your mind belongs to you. And you are free to think as you will, to write, publish, create new technologies, start companies, go into business, compete with the established technologies of the time, etc. What we see then in Britain during the Enlightenment is the liberation of the commoners. The vast preponderance of the population is becoming increasingly liberated, which includes the right to seek an education. The most important thing about liberty and individual rights, the most important single thing about it is, I think, is that it liberates the best members of the human race. Those who choose to use their minds, regardless of gender, race, tribe, ethnic background, whatever. The best members of the human race, those who choose to think, those who choose to use their minds. Under capitalism, under the principle of individual rights, they are free to think and think as they will. Now, conversely, if your life belongs to the state, then it follows logically that your mind belongs to the state. And the only thinking you are free to do is that which is deemed permissible by the state. You could think in accordance with what the king or the dictator or the church or whomever permits you to do. You could think in accordance with their beliefs. And if you disagree, and you disagree loudly enough, Well, you go to a gulag or a concentration camp, or you're burned at the stake, or whatever. The principle of individual rights liberates the best members of mankind, its thinkers. This is what happened in Great Britain during the 18th century. This is why you see commoners like James Watt revolutionizing the steam engine, creating the work engine of the Industrial Revolution. This is how and why you see commoners like Matthew Boulton in business with Watt to mass produce the steam engine. And both of them, by the way, made a well-deserved fortune. This is, it's in Britain, Scotland in particular. You see a genius like Adam Smith, whose day job was what? He's a professor of moral philosophy at the University of Glasgow. But Professor Smith revolutionized our understanding of economic science in the Wealth of Nations, published fittingly in 1776. Smith, the first great economist who pointed out the great virtues of an essentially free market and essentially free international trade.